What's going on, my friends? Welcome to the Let Me Hook You Up podcast. Today I have my second guest, my neighbor and friend, Showa.
Hey guys.
And so, Showa, we can jump right into it. But before that, so just like we did with the other time when we had a guest, we're just chatting. And hopefully, in the course of all of that, you pick a lesson or two. We're sharing our experiences. One, hopefully, that you feel that you're not alone, or you get to know that you're not alone because you're not. And also, you learn a thing or two. If you have any questions, let us know in the comment section. We may touch on it a little time. She's my neighbor, so we can do other episodes and answer any questions that you have.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Come on, join us. Hi, Sheila.
Hi.
So, tell my listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Showa, obviously. I am originally from Zambia. I came here when I was 12 or 13?
Okay.
Between the two, yeah. Um, I'm a mom, a wife, a sister. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
kind of awkward,
Yeah.
when people say,
It's-
"Tell me
yeah.
about yourself,"
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
don't even know what to say.
And
but-
I love that you go, with a lot of breath to it. You give your background, you give your different roles. I think it's very easy to get stuck on one, and sometimes that defines us. So for example, like if it's your job or your role as a parent, then that takes it all. And what I find is sometimes when that is maybe not going the way you expect it to, because that's your main identity,
Right.
it gets a lot. It's a big hit.
Yeah.
And I'm actually loving these days on social media. I see many people when you ask them to tell them about yourself, they try to stay away from what they do for work, and then do like what you just did.
Yeah.
Give a lot of breath, and I think that's the way to go because it conditions your mind to remind you of all of the different roles you have, and the fact that they all should represent a part of you as opposed to one thing taking all of you.
Right.
But yeah, well, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so what interested you about a mental health podcast? Because that's what I do. So what was it that made you go, you know what, hey, I'd love to come on your podcast, you know?
Well, I have always been interested in like the mental health field since I was young, really. And so when I found out you're a psychologist, I was like, oh my gosh, our neighbor's a psychologist. I can learn a lot. And then I found out what you were doing. I saw your social media. I'm like, man, this is up my alley. I can learn a lot. We can express ourselves. I've never been someone who's actually expressed myself publicly. So this is the first time I'm actually on a podcast and talking about my feelings or talking about mental health. It's just conversations that I have with my family or my friends or my husband. But that's what got me. I was like, oh, and they're African too.
Yeah.
What are the
Double
odds,
whammy, right?
Because we don't really talk about mental health as Africans. And that made me happy. And I was like, oh, this could be something. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming. And so whenever I hear, there's a truth. We don't talk about mental health nearly as often as other people do. Sometimes it's almost, especially I've heard people say this, almost as if people in the U.S. talk about mental health too much. But then of course that's what our background of barely ever talking about it. So then there's feel too much.
But do we really even talk about it a lot as Africans? It's like we're conditioned to just either keep things in the family or keep things to yourself. Don't be too expressive.
Right.
That's true.
Especially for women.
Yeah.
It's like
exactly. Yeah.
You're conditioned to be heard. No. What's it? One of I think one of Laurentia's history. I don't know what it's the school something. That one of the things that a teacher would say to her was, a lady needs to be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
So there's that conditioning a lot. Definitely when it has to do with mental health, it's a thing that many of us are not comfortable with because we don't know where to go with it.
Right.
So what has been your experience, your own mental health journey, your own experience with people around you?
Right. Like we said, we're raised not to really be expressive. So even from a young age, it's just something that you're taught to just be quiet. If you're sad, don't show it on your face. If you're feeling away, keep it to yourself, swallow it. Next day, keep it moving. You don't really talk about it, And I feel like that has had an impact throughout my life, and it's also coming to my adult life, where I'm unlearning those things. I'm learning how to be more open with people, talk to people. Usually, I keep things inside, And so that really So coming from Africa where it was like that, and then I come here and everybody's different. You know, everybody's expressive. Everybody talks about how they're feeling.
Yep.
You know, and that's where I think things shifted for me, was when we moved here and I realized that I don't have to be quiet. I can talk to someone. It's not normal to just swallow your feelings, and you know, and that can have an effect on you physically as well. You know, so what was I saying? What was the question? Here we go.
Right. We'll get into ADHD soon.
Yeah.
Now, you have answered my question, you know, what your mental health journey was. So you come here at around 12, 13. As you grow up, you see that people are more expressive. And so you decide, I don't need to hold it in. But not everybody else has unlearned like you have, right? So parents might not be necessarily where you are.
Right.
You know, other relatives might not be. So how was it for you? Was it a case of like everybody else, like, oh, you know, hey, if that's what you want to do, by all means, you know, was it a thing of other people also needing to come on board for you?
Needing to come on board. I don't know if they ever came on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was a struggle. Like, when I learned, you know, you go to school, you mingle with other people, and I'm seeing how other people express themselves. If I come home and try to express myself in that way, it's like, whoa, why are you talking like that? I go, you just shut up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was a process. So imagine now you're in a new country, you're adapting to new things. There's so many barriers. Thank God I could speak good English.
Yeah.
You know, and people would even ask me, "Oh, where did you learn how to speak English? Like, did I learn it at the airport?" You know, I'm like, no, it's the main language in my country. You know, so people would always be surprised about that. So good thing I didn't have to take
ESL.
ESL. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I didn't have to take it. So I was just thrown into into the jungle. I felt, you know,
Right.
because I don't know how cultures here are. So it was hard adapting, and during that time, especially being African, it wasn't cool to be African. Now all of a sudden everybody wants to be African.
Right.
You know?
But even that, there's still, I mean, I think it's definitely, you know, a lot cooler now than it was at the time, you know, but, you know, I can imagine, but, you know, when you were 12, you know, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. And so with that comes with people talking down to you, you know, thinking they're better than you. And then there's bullying, you know, and you don't, I'm used to being a certain way, and then I come here, everybody's different, and they're pointing out those things that are different about you, you know, and that's hard. You're going through that at school, you can't really come home and talk about it, you know. You talk about it, it's like, well, you're supposed to be going to school to learn. Don't think about other people. You're supposed to be going to school to learn, you know.
Don't listen to what they say.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't matter what they say.
Right. But you're the one who's feeling those emotions. You're the one who's in that situation.
You're the one who has to deal with it every day.
Yeah, and kids are mean. Kids are ruthless. You know, it's different for your parents who are coming here. They're going to school. They're with adults, and they're older. They know how to do certain things. You're a child, and you have to adapt. You know, so with that, it was hard because you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to. You know, thank God I made some good friends. My first friend, she's actually Zambian. She's my best friend. Shout out to Philansi.
It's the way to go.
Right.
You start with the people that look and you have the most in common with.
Yes, yes. And she had been here for a while, so we became really close, and she helped me through those times, you know, and I felt like I had someone, you know. But at home, things didn't really change. And my parents by far are not bad people, you know, and they're, how can I say it? Our parents were brought up differently, you know, and they can only operate from how they were brought up or the things that they know. They don't know as much but when it comes to emotional intelligence or even mental health, it's just kind of like go to school, do what you're supposed to do, become somebody in life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then also coming from high achieving parents, it's like just always be your best.
Yes.
Forget about everything, always be your best. Be number one in everything, you know? And not really thinking about all the other things that you need to get there, if that makes sense.
It does.
You know?
It does, yeah.
So.
Because to be your best, it's not only about getting me the right academic materials, right? I also need to be able to survive the bullying.
Right.
You know, I also need to be able to express, emote, find a way to have an outlet. And if all of that is supposed to be quiet, then there's only so much that the academic materials and everything else can do.
Right.
You know, yeah. So, and you mentioned, you know, by far that your parents are not bad people, and I'm sure they're not. How do you balance? Because as you get older, you know, sometimes you can't help but think, what could have been if I had someone to talk to as a 12-year-old, as a 13-year-old, right? You know, if I had a therapist, or if somebody listened to me at home about these things, as opposed to me being expected to, you know, get over it, you know. So how do you balance that and the fact that you know they love you, you know they did the absolute best for you, you know they were raised in a different time, and still continue to love them despite all of these nuances? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. To be honest, that takes a while. You know, when you're young, you're not thinking about that. It feels like you're stuck in that world or in those feelings, or like you're not understood. That takes a while. For me, finding balance and seeing my parents as human beings, like who also have wounds, who also have been through things, and they're human, you know? I didn't realize that until I got older.
Yeah.
You know? And so think about how life was being young and not thinking that way. And then I'm older and I'm like, man, okay, they didn't really mean to hurt my feelings. They didn't hate me. They didn't. But when you're young, that's what you think, you know? So I didn't find that balance until I was older, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I can only imagine 12, 13-year-old, whole different country, puberty hits, right? So you're in a whole different country, your body's changing, you're dealing with bullying. And for women too, I feel like the body changes are more drastic, you know, or at least you're seeing other people's, you know, changes and stuff. And there's so much nuance there,
right.
that to have to deal with it and feel alone at the time, you know, that is hard.
It is.
You know, and
It is very difficult.
when you finally almost like forgive your parents and go, you know what, I know they loved me, I know they didn't mean to hurt me. For you, what helped in your journey to that?
Whew.
How did you come about that realization to say, you know what?
It was a long journey. Where do I start? So for me, it was how all this started. Look, let me go back to, was it middle school or high school? Middle school. I don't remember whether it was middle school or high school, but I think I might have been around 14 or 15. And all I remember is that I was going through a hard time. And I felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to. And thank God where we lived, it was close to like a campus. And I found out that they had mental health resources. And they had therapists and all of that. And I said, you know what? Since I can't talk to anybody, I don't know who to turn to. Let me try to go there. And so I went to seek therapy. And I believe it was like 3 sessions. And after that, they tell me, well, you're a minor. So we need to get consent from your parents in order to continue seeing you. And, that was gut-wrenching.
They should have told you that before.
Yeah, they should have told me that before.
Because I think you have up to 6 sections or up to 30 days, whichever comes first. After that, they have to inform your parents.
Yeah. So they said they needed to have like consent from my mom for me to keep coming. And I was scared. I said, absolutely not. Like, what am I going to do now? You know? So I ended up having I had that conversation with my mom. I was like, hey, so
I've been doing
I've
this.
been going to therapy, and they want you to sign consent for me to continue going, and this is really helpful for me. And that didn't go well. That didn't go well because our parents don't know what therapy is. They don't know what counseling is, and they're trying to like, you don't talk to them, so it's kind of like, why do you want to go there? What's really bad about your life? You know?
You're only 14. What do you have to
Yeah.
worry about?
What do you have to worry about? What?
You live
Come
in
on.
America.
Right.
There are people starving in Zambia. Like,
Yeah. So it's like they're not understanding like why you're doing all of this, you know? And I remember just feeling defeated because like, okay, she's not going to sign this, and even if she does, it's kind of like I'm already feeling bad for going, you know, because then they think you're going to talk about your business or family, like, you know what I mean? When there was really like nothing really bad going on in the family, but still it's that fear, like, what are you talking to strangers about?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so for me, that was where I knew that I needed to go to therapy, but in that moment I couldn't, you know? So I stopped, and then I think a few months later, maybe even a year later, I went back.
Well, but briefly though, like for when you told your mom, I mean, you mentioned that it didn't go well. Did she give you a reason? Because I don't reckon that it would have been financial, right? You know, because I mean, if you did 3 sessions yourself, chances are it wasn't that expensive to do it.
It was free.
You know, so
Yeah.
mom, you don't have to pay anything. I've done 3 sessions and you didn't even notice. So that means that it won't affect my chores. It won't affect my school. Was it mainly just you have nothing to worry about? Don't talk about our business out there. What was the reason as to why she wouldn't sign?
I think it's just the fear of the unknown, you know? Okay, you're going to do this. What is going to come out of it, you know? And my mom is a lawyer, so she's very critical, you know? So she wants to know why she's signing something. What is this about? And if she could be in the room, she'd be in the room, you know? So it's just, she's always been very cautious about things like that. And she didn't want to just jump into something without fully understanding it. Yeah.
And then you say a few months later you went back.
Yes.
Was this time with her consent or with a different provider to try to get your three
Yeah.
sessions?
So I went back and I told them I need to talk to someone, and they agreed to see me. And so they agreed to see me, and I went for a couple of sessions, and then again it came up that, hey, we need consent. And then that was it. Like, I didn't go back after that. Yeah. So that happened, and then you just go back to kind of life being how it is, and just going with emotions and trying to figure it out on your own, you know? So you try to find different coping mechanisms and things like that. But also in that, when I went the second time is when ADHD came up for me. And that's when I believe, you know, that's when I was kind of diagnosed. Like, yeah, you know, there's something more here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I reckon it wasn't an easy conversation to go have with your mom. But hey, remember the thing you didn't sign?
Yeah.
I went back and now they're talking about this ADHD thing. Can you take me to a doctor so I get medicine for it?
Yeah. It was absolutely not.
Was it a conversation you even had? Did you bring it back to your parents and say?
I did. And it's just kind of like, no, you know, or you just pray. Let's pray about it. You know, you want to believe in these things that people are telling you that you are. And, you know, that was the conversation about it. Yeah.
Okay. So yesterday when we were talking, you mentioned that you didn't get any treatment for that until you were old enough to then get services yourself.
Yes. So how I knew, I'll tell you a story. So in high school, I was doing well. I was doing good academically. And so much so that I believe in my senior year, for people who are doing good in school, you could do this thing called virtual learning. And I decided to take, me and one of my best friends, JD, we decided to take Spanish virtually. And you could, then during that semester, they introduced the thing where you can sign yourself out and because you could work on it at home, you know. Of course, we took advantage of that because it was at the end of the day. So sometimes we would
Sign up
sign
and
ourselves out,
not
we'd go
go do
out to
virtual
eat. We had
learning.
this
Yeah.
thing where we used to go to like Taco Thursdays. We'd go to the stores and just kind of like window shop, just doing stuff that, you know, we're not supposed to be doing, you know,
Right.
we're supposed to be at school. And so we fell behind. But let me say I fell behind, okay? Because at that I didn't know how to manage my time. You know, and I'm thinking I'm a big procrastinator. Where it's like, okay, I know I'll get it done. It's not that hard. And we found out like cheat codes. Everybody in class knew like, okay, you can always, when you go home, you can go check Google Translator and all that. So I'll just do it at home. It's going to take me 5 minutes. I'm not going to worry about it. Thing is, JD was doing his work. He got home, he was doing his work. And then next thing you know, for me, it's like, okay, I always put it off. Like, I'll do it later. It's not going to take me that long, especially if I'm doing it at home, blah, blah, blah. And then one day, my guidance counselor called my mom. Yeah. Called my mom and told her that, oh, well, she's far behind in her Spanish and it's the virtual learning one. And if she doesn't catch up, she's not going to graduate. Yes.
Did you know the call was coming before it came?
No, I didn't, because in my mind, I'm like, I'll catch up. I'll spend the weekend doing this and catch up. No, I guess I didn't know the call was going to come. Oh, and hell broke loose.
Yeah. I can only imagine.
Hell broke loose. Like, I'm not going to graduate because of Spanish. So, oh man, when I got home, it was fire. It was fire. My mom made me sit and do all the modules overnight. I stayed up the whole night catching up. Best believe when I went back to school the next day, I was caught up.
Ready to graduate.
All of them, yeah. And that's when I knew, like, okay, this is a problem.
But if you think about it, if it was something that was possible overnight, that means that if you really gave it 20 minutes a day,
Exactly.
it would have been done.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you posted something that I saw where you're like, oh, after putting something off or
For
whatever,
5
and then you
days, you
do
do
it
it
and
in
then you
5
do it in
minutes.
5 minutes. Like, dang, I could have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that a lot, you know. So I that's what happened with that. And I graduated. They didn't not make me graduate. I graduated. But there's so many little things that like that have happened throughout, you know.
Your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So college is when you think 19 is when you fully
Yeah.
go out there to seek mental health treatment, right? So was it mainly just ADHD at the time, or just you went to seek therapy and, discuss other things, life,
Pretty much everything, to be honest. I don't really talk about this. I haven't really talked about it with anybody, especially on a public platform. But I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with depression. And when I got to college is when I was like, okay, I can actually do this. I can seek the help that I've been wanting to seek. I'm here on my own. And mind you, I could have went to school right in the town where I went to high school. They even offered me scholarship and all that. I said, nope, I'm going furthest away from home, you know? So I left, I went to college, and that's when things really hit because life changes. You have to have time management. You have to
be
have
an
a
adult.
schedule. You have to be an adult. Nobody's waking you up to go to class. You have to make it there on time. You have tests. You're taking 12 credit hours or more, and you need to manage your time. And I realized quickly, like, whoa, I need to figure something out because I'm going to drown, you know? And for me, it started with, okay, let me get my mental health in check. And that's how I started going back to therapy. And I was reluctant really to take medication because of that thing where it's like, no, medication is not good, all this. So even then I'm like, I don't need this. I just need to talk to someone.
Right.
You know, it wasn't until halfway through the semester where I'm like, well, I'm going to drown.
If I don't explore at least,
Yes.
look into it at least.
Yeah, I'm going to drown. That's when things started getting better is when I realized, okay, I really need help.
So you finally got on medication. Yeah. Started seeing some improvement there. At that point, of course, you're in college, so your parents probably don't know this whole journey.
Oh, they didn't know until I was getting ready to graduate.
How
That's when
how did they take it?
um
At
I
this point,
could
I'm an adult. What are you gonna do?
yes, at this point I've gone through therapy. I kind of know like how to even bring the conversation up, and just matter of factly, I just told my mom, like, yeah, I've been taking this medication, and this is what it is. This is telling her why I'm, and there's really nothing she could say. I'm like, it helped me. Do you remember how I used to struggle? Do you remember how?
I almost didn't graduate.
Yeah, do you remember even how I used to get in trouble when I was a kid? You tell me to do something, or hey, take the meat out of the freezer, and forgot about it, and she comes home from work, it's not out of the freezer, and I got in trouble a lot, and like I have the attention span of a peanut. Literally, I have the attention span of a peanut. So I got in trouble a lot even when I was a kid in school. Is not paying attention or not completing a task on time. Those are my issues. So I kind of I had a better way of explaining to her how this helps me. And how also that has affected other parts of my life. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us, especially giving that for some of the people who are watching it. They'll be, what?
Right.
Show's been dealing with this?
Right.
And I think especially for the people who will be surprised by it, I guess that's the way we know that ADHD, anxiety, depression don't have a look.
Yep, they don't. And that also takes us to masking, and I don't know if you can explain better what masking
No, you
is.
do. You're the one that brought it up. Tell them.
I realized, like, when you realize that you've been masking most of your life, it's a crazy feeling. It's like, wow, like,
So let me tell them about masking.
Yeah.
So masking, for those of you that are not familiar with the term, it's common in mental health community, anxiety, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder. The idea of effectively hiding or suppressing huge parts of who you are, so other people don't know that there's quote unquote something wrong with you. So you try to keep up as best you can. And for someone with ADHD, that probably contributes to the anxiety because you're going above and beyond,
Yes,
just to keep up and just to not be a nuisance or not be a bother, not get into trouble. So yes, that's masking. No, go ahead.
yes. So you realize you've been masking majority of your life. It's like when you get to a point when you're older, it's like, man, I could have just been myself and life would have been good. It's like you start learning how to adapt in different situations because you're trying to hide parts of yourself, and what was I saying again? I forgot because I was leading to somewhere, but then
I had to explain masking.
yes,
I'm sorry.
and then now my train of thought is gone. I don't remember what I was.
Well, so still around masking, because I think it's one of the things that sometimes makes healing or recovery so non-linear, that's for sure. Because on one hand, you're getting more information about mental health, you're getting to know yourself better. You find out, oh snap, I've been masking, a lot. And ideally that should be good because now I can take off the mask and just live. But then a part of you is like, so I could have, been myself and done better 10 years ago.
Right.
But either somebody didn't do this or I didn't know this information or I didn't and then that in its own way sucks. It's almost depressing by itself.
It's overwhelming. You live overwhelmed all the time.
So I was diagnosed when I was 28, and to be honest, like the improvement I've seen since then, I always wonder what could have been. Because I flunked out of, not medical school because I didn't get into medical school, but I was in my college, we do biological science first year, and then based on grade points, they select people to go through a rigorous process to go to the medical school. I graduated with my first year GPA was 3.05. First semester 2.8. That's the lowest GPA I've ever, because it was my first semester in college.
Yes.
All of this, like you're saying, nobody's waking you up to go to classes. nobody's forcing you to go study. I've never actually studied. I didn't know how to study.
Tell me about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I get, diagnosed at 28 because I had to. I was doing my dissertation and I could not wing that one. So I get diagnosed and I started on Vyvanse, and Vyvanse just so much focus. Sometimes, when I was on Vyvanse, the bubbly part of me almost was shut off. So Lauricia could always tell when I was on medication because it was so much focus, but I could get so much done. And since being on medication, I've since moved on to Adderall, which works better for me. But I can keep up with a lot more, and I always wonder if I lived here at the time, if I sought treatment earlier, could my life be different? And I mean, as a psychologist, I'm at a space where I can, because I know that's not a helpful place to go.
Yeah.
But every now and then it pops up. And sometimes that can be, like you said, it can be overwhelming thinking about what could have been.
Right. What challenges did you have when you were younger that are...
So except I didn't notice them, right? Because some of the things that I heard growing up is like, you never open a book when you get home, right? Because I never did. Like all the way through high school, the end of high school, I only studied few days to an exam. You would not see me come out of class. And I actually went to boarding school for junior high, so like the USS equivalent of 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And during our prep time, I'm writing other people's notes. Because what am I going to do? Just read?
Right.
I don't got time for that. Like it's almost mind numbing for me. So I wasn't the kind to study, but I was smart enough that based off of what I was taught in class, I could get by. And sometimes I remember in college, I would always say, if I could study as long as these people do, I would be a genius.
Tell me about it. Right.
I had friends who could go to the library for 6 hours. I can barely do an hour.
Right.
If I could study for 6 hours, I would be a genius.
Same. So I thought. So do you feel like you've gone through life winging it?
Oh yeah, I winged it.
Yeah.
Till 28.
Yeah.
Now, so 28 is, and so Lanisha came here, and Lanisha is my wife, by the way, for those that do not know, right about the same time, just before I started, college. So Lanisha came in 2015. I've forgotten, at this point, I've lost track of the math for my age. So Lanisha came here, and then I got diagnosed. So sometimes, I don't know how much of the changes is because my wife's been really, really helpful and instrumental in my life versus medication. But either way, when you look at the difference, like, well, what have I been doing all my life?
Right.
Just winging it. I remember one of the things that I've always heard growing up is, I'll say the tree version first. I was the fear nyansa in school nyansa. Like, you don't have common sense. It's all school sense. Like, I'm smart, so I got the book sense, but the common sense to just be a successful teenager, it wasn't there.
Right.
Impulse control, 0. A few years ago, I was $25,000 in credit card debt. Just because when the thing is cool, I'll buy it. It doesn't matter that my salary doesn't give me the wiggle room to pay it in time. If I can do the minimum payment, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right? These are all like little aspects of ADHD that sometimes you don't catch. Right? Because people just think you're careless or stuff like that. Maybe some people are who don't have ADHD, but it is a part of ADHD, and grew up with all of that. So yes, I winged the first 28 years of my life.
And I feel like that brings us to how ADHD shows up different in men and women, because I feel like women are more critical, like of themselves when if you have ADHD. It's like you're more critical and you're very almost hyper vigilant, and you're trying to get in front of stuff before it happens, and it's like you live overwhelmed. You're always overwhelmed because you're trying to be 2 steps ahead. And while I've noticed men or boys, it's like if it's there, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. For us, like you sit there and you think of all the scenarios of what could go wrong or if things, and then by the time you're done thinking about it, it's like you're tired you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, it doesn't show up in
Those classic
impulse.
ways.
Yeah, it's more so in, it turns into fear, it turns into anxiety. And it stops me from a lot of things, kind of makes you feel debilitated, you know? So, yeah, I feel like that's where it shows up. And me, as like you say, okay, I'm 25, you're $25,000 in debt. For me, it's like, whoa, I don't even want to get there.
Yeah.
So, what can I do to make sure I'm not in this hole? And you're gonna, because I like things, I want to buy things, I'm gonna work a lot, be a workaholic, and it makes you feel like you're accomplishing things, but then you don't really have time for a lot of other stuff,
things,
you know?
yeah.
And because I don't want to get in that hole, you know? So it's like, it's interesting how it shows up different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, like it's been like since working in the field. So in my experience, I think people with ADHD go one of two ways. There is the happy-go-lucky. If I text you and there was a lot of typos in it, my bad. You know.
Right.
Typically, those are the men.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and then there is the one that will read over the text 3-4 times to make sure there's no typo.
And still have a typo.
Right.
And you're like, dang, why did I say that? I just read it 5 times.
Exactly.
Why did
I still missed it.
You know?
Yeah. And oftentimes that's how women present because society is beating you up, right? So you don't want to give them another reason to beat you up. So then you go above and beyond, like you're mentioning, and some of that can be reduced significantly with early diagnosis, with early conversations around mental health and ADHD treatment, medication, definitely. You know, so I guess this is all to say, if you're listening and you relate to some of the symptoms we talked about, or episode 2 and 3 of this podcast speaks into ADHD extensively, check those out. And if you relate to the symptoms, please consult, seek treatment, because as you can hear, it makes a lot of difference. Okay. All right. Now, you know, we can sort of transition a little bit into ADHD, anxiety, depression around other African people, right? Because most likely you haven't told them, so they don't know, but they see you. You know, on the days that you're maybe down, they try to encourage you. If you're anxious and you're spiraling, you're probably getting, why are you that worried about it? Just forget, you know. So I guess talk to me, what's been your experience dealing with these things around other people that maybe don't, as an adult, you know, that don't necessarily care for or, you know about mental health?
It brings me back to masking. Because nobody has, it's just now that I'm telling even my friends about this, and they had no idea. No idea. Literally, most people in my life would tell you what, you? Yeah, because I started at a young age.
Right.
You know, learning how to keep things to myself. And I'm a person who will isolate. If I'm going through something, I will literally fall off the face of the earth. I'm known for deactivating my Instagram. I'm known for not answering phone calls. I'm known for not texting people back. And usually it's in times when I am struggling mentally, because I don't want people to see me that way, you know? But
that's when you need the most support.
There you go. And usually when I'm like that is when I need people the most. And it's a bad coping mechanism I've learned, you know, and it doesn't help. It only makes things worse, because then you come out of it, it's like, okay, put your big girl panties on and soldier through. You haven't really dealt with the things that were going on in your mind, you know? So it's like, people have never really known, you know, if they knew the things that gone through or the things that I'm dealing with, they would be shocked. Some people will be shocked listening to this, like, right? Showa, you? What? Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'm just grateful that I have friends who understand me, and friends who I'm now able to, some of them I've been able to talk to them about this stuff since, you know, and they've always told me, you know, you can always call me, but I'm not like that. It's hard for me to talk about things, you know, and even reaching out to people, it's that thing where it's like, I don't want to feel like I'm a burden or bring your mood down. I'd rather deal with it on my own, or sit and get over it and then we can talk about it. Or maybe just forget about it, like it never happened, you know? But you can't go through life like that. You know, it's like just piling things on top. It's like eventually you burst, you know? Eventually you have a breaking point. Yeah, so as far as like the African community, and also what discourages me in talking about these things is the stigma around mental health, around anxiety, depression, even ADHD. People will be like, "What is that? Is that even a real thing?" You just
Right,
don't
right.
listen. Just pay attention, you know?
You think
It's
I
easy-
wouldn't do it if it was that easy?
Right, right. A lot of people don't understand it. And quite frankly, a lot of people not really want to learn more about it, you know? So it's like one of those things where you just don't talk about it. And even being around people who, I'll give you an example. So when was this? A couple years ago. There's a young lady who, she's African. It seemed like everything was going good for her. She was on track to graduate college. Of course, she had a big loss in her life. The previous year, her dad had passed away, and she went back to school. It looked like everything was okay, you know. And I'm hearing that her friends realized that she was distant. You know, she was distant. She was not talking to them as much. She would just write cryptic things on social media like Snapchat, Instagram. They just noticed a shift in her, you know. But she was always that friend who everybody would go to, like, "Oh, hey, can I talk to you?" And they'll talk to you.
Strong friend.
This strong friend, right? And so she came home. It was like during I think Christmas, was it like winter break? Because it was cold season when that happened. She came home, and the previous night I hear that she was getting, on Friday night, she was preparing for Sabbath, for church on Saturday. And she was cooking with her mom, got her stuff, you know, ready for church. She was supposed to sing, I think, the next day too. And that night she left, and something happened. Like she committed suicide. She jumped over a bridge, and when I'm hearing these stories of like how things were before, how just her behaviors prior to this, in my mind, I'm like, dang, man, I wish I had a relationship with her where it's like, I know what you're going through. Let's talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, why didn't anybody realize, catch it or see? Because that's one thing anybody would tell you. I know when something's wrong with someone, you know?
Because you've dealt with it.
Yeah, you know?
And you've hitting it.
Yeah.
You know, so like you can
Something is going on here. And so many stories I can tell where it's like, dang, if I didn't have that intuition, this could have went left, you know? And so with that, for her, I'm like, there were so many signs. And you're supposed to be strong. She lost a parent. There's so many things that even when I go back and read like certain articles that she would write about, you know, being African in here and all that, you could tell like someone was struggling.
Right.
And it makes a whole world of a difference having someone to talk to or even relate to and say, hey, I understand what you're going through. And here's, you know, it makes a difference. And I feel like nobody understood her, you know? So that was, and so when that happened, Lord, the things that I was hearing broke my heart, you know? And, oh, why would she do that? Oh, that's selfish. Why would she do that to her mom? Oh, just a lot of ignorant things were being said. And I'm like, this is why these things happen, you know? And things like that is what makes people not talk about mental health, you know?
If I'm not here, like for this person, the fact that you're going to call me selfish, and I've heard you call somebody selfish. So I'm not going to tell you I'm dealing with this. Because all you're going to tell me is,
Exactly.
get over it.
I heard all kinds of stupid. She's an idiot. Oh, she's selfish. Why would she do that? That is so dumb. Oh, if that was me, I would not go to her funeral. Like what?
Right? The people don't realize that you're not talking to the person who has passed. Right? You're talking to me. You're calling her selfish. You're calling her an idiot. You're saying you're not going to go to her funeral. So you think if I'm dealing with suicidal thoughts, I'm going to come talk to you?
You see what I'm saying?
It's not going to happen.
Yes. And those are the things that we deal with in the African community.
Let me go get LJ.
Okay.
And so we'll be back in like 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll pick it up from there. Welcome back, friends. We were just talking about dealing with anxiety, depression, etc. Around other Africans. We talked about people's reaction when somebody else has died by suicide, and the idea that people would say, for lack of a better word, shit about the person who has passed, forgetting that other people are listening. It's one of the things. I actually have a video on it that speaks about watching what you say to the people who are your friends, because you don't know what the other person is dealing with.
And words mean things.
Yeah. And what you say about the other person is going to determine how comfortable I am talking to you about what I'm dealing with. Yeah. So with your own experience growing up, having not an outlet, having no one to talk to, how do you feel like that is influencing you as a parent? Let's start there. Like, do you find that you are bringing your own experience to make sure that your child feels free to express? Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. For me, that's very important. I feel like I want my children to be able to express themselves. And I've always told my husband that, like, it's important. Like, be able to express yourself. And if you want to cry, because there's this thing even for guys where it's like, you're a boy, you should not be crying. If something hurts you, it hurts you. Let it out and then let it go. It's very important for them to learn that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to talk about things. Because the more you don't talk about it, doesn't make it go away.
Right. And
if you talk about it, you can get help. If you don't talk about it,
nobody knows
you're dealing with it, So for me, that's critical because I know the impact it can have later on, that's very important for me. Yeah. And also, like, just looking at different signs, because sometimes kids won't express themselves, but you can tell with behavior.
Right.
So I'm someone who picks up on behaviors very easily. I know when something's bothering someone. I know when there's something wrong, I'll give you an example. I was getting my son ready for school one morning, and I wanted him to wear jeans. So I grabbed the jeans, and his outfit looked fire. He looked good. Okay.
Yeah.
And he told me, "Mommy, I don't want to wear these pants. Can I wear different pants?" I said, "No, Jay, if you don't wear these pants, they're going to get
the outfit doesn't work."
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's not, and they'll get small. Like whereby you have several jeans, you never wear them. So this outfit looks good. You look really nice. Like, what's the problem? He's like, I just don't want to wear these. Like, can I wear something else? And I could tell he was sad about it. But I'm like, no, you're going to wear these. Like, what's the problem? There's nothing wrong with this outfit. So we go downstairs. He eats his breakfast, and it comes up again. You could tell he's sad, like sad. In my mind, I'm like, what's the problem?
Jeans.
Like, it's jeans. You look nice, So I ask him, I'm like, why don't you want to? He's like, Mommy, I just don't want to wear them. So then it's almost time to go to school. And you could tell, like, the sadness is just getting worse and worse. So in my mind, I'm like, jeans are making you this upset? Like, why? So I asked him, I'm like, hey, why don't you want to wear these jeans? I'm like, he's like, oh, I just don't want to wear them. I mean, I want to wear something else. I'm like, why? Is someone bullying you when you wear these jeans, or what's the matter? He's He's like, no, I just don't want to wear them. I'm like, Jay, you're going to wear these jeans to school. You're not, just because you're crying is not, we're not going to change
you
it.
out of it.
Yeah. So then we agreed. Then I had to call his dad. I'm like, hey, talk to JJ. Tell him he looks good, in his jeans. So we had to give him a little pep talk or whatever. And because I couldn't understand it. Like, why? You're crying. I'm thinking something's going on at school where people are making fun of you for wearing jeans and so after we talked to him and his dad talked to him, we kind of hyped him up and he was feeling good or whatever. And I ended up having to go drop him off at school this day. He didn't go on the bus because we had to have a talk. And so after he got into a better mood and was feeling better about wearing his jeans, he told me, he's like, Mommy, I don't want to wear jeans because they're just not my style. I'm like, okay. I'm like, why are they not your style? They look good on you. He's like, yeah, Mommy, I know, but I like to be comfortable. And jeans are not comfortable for me, and they're just not my style. And this is the type of person who will tell you, you find a shoe and you think it's nice to tell you, Mommy, that's not my style. Yeah. So even that taught me, I'm like, man, like because he's having a sense of self and he's got likes and dislikes and so we have to respect that.
How old is JJ?
JJ is 7.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody would have lost their mind to anything, but the 7-year-old me, one, didn't have the language to say that's not my style.
Tell me about it.
And wouldn't dare.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Like, my parents have spent the money to buy it, and you're here talking about that's not my style.
Let me tell you, when it was even back to school, your parents will go shopping for you.
Mm-hmm. You won't be there.
You won't be there.
Go buy it.
No, I go with him, and he's gonna pick and choose. Oh, I like this. I like this. And his type before school, he'll grab his clothes, put them on the bed, make an outfit with his socks and everything, and he just like, he takes pride in what he wears. Even in the house, I'm like, Jay, why are you wearing this? Oh, because I have to look good in the house.
Okay.
I'm like, dude, do you do laundry? So that moment I realized he was expressing himself and he felt open to tell, like, after, because he was crying. Like, it broke my heart. I'm like, dude, something is going on at school and you're going to tell me. But no, it's not what I like, and I don't want to be forced to wear it. And I have other things that I could wear. And so knowing he finds joy in picking out what he wants to wear, I respect that, and we allow him to do that, and next time we know, okay, if we buy jeans, just buy 2 pairs, maybe for special occasions, but he is not a fan of them. So for us, we were not able to express ourselves in that way. Whatever your parents buy, you're going to wear it.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge message to JJ. Because if I can express myself about jeans, which to other people may be seemingly small, trivial, nonsensical, at least to the adult, I can more easily tell you if somebody's bullying me. Because you listened to me when it was about jeans. There's a higher chance of you listening to me when it's about something more important. But if you brush my feelings aside when I was talking about my jeans, never visited it, never gave me the room to speak on it, I probably won't mention it if I'm dealing with something tough at school.
Right.
And kind of small things like that is how I feel like kids learn one way or the other. Like you did at 13, that, if I would be told to, keep quiet and, be grateful for what I have, then I'm not going to tell you.
Right.
Right. I think, when we talk about breaking generational curses, and I put curses in quotes because maybe that's not necessarily accurate of everybody's experience, but trying to do things differently for our kids.
Yes, that's a goal.
Yeah.
That's a goal. Things have to be different. Not saying we had a terrible life, but things could have been better.
Yeah.
And one thing also is, like, things are not everything, I would much rather be an emotionally available parent than give you the world. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I want you to have things,
Right.
And I want you to enjoy having stuff, like being like everybody else. But I feel like what's important is being active, being present. Like if there's a football game or soccer game, you're there, showing that support, being there at practices, like I said, talking about things, spending time getting to know your child and what they like and what they don't like, you know, and learning, because they have their own personalities. Just because you're a certain way, they're not going to be how you want them to be or how you expect them to be. So you learn who they are. So learning your kids, I feel like, is important, because then you know how to interact with them. Yeah.
Yeah, hey, we're on course to break generational
Yes.
curses and build generational wealth, and this covers emotional wealth, intellectual wealth, and wealth, because I think the fact that we don't talk about mental health does not mean that the issues don't exist.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, like, I get it. Like, for most of us growing up in our respective African countries, growing up in Ghana, I did not hear the term psychologist until at the earliest high school, that's for sure.
When you hear psychologist, it's like cuckoo.
Exactly.
You think
Like,
about
who is it?
madness.
Who is a psychologist? What do they do?
Yeah.
And the first time I saw a psychologist was in my lecture hall in the university. And he's one of, actually, every psychologist that I knew from Ghana was a teacher. I did not know a psychologist in the form of a therapist.
Right.
Right. So if it's not around you, you don't know you need it.
Right.
And also when it comes to our needs, and, if there's barely enough money to take you to the doctor, we're not even thinking about money for the therapist.
Right.
So I get it for when we were growing up and it not being available. But especially now, and especially if you live in the US where there are a little bit more resources, and if you're a family that can't afford it, why not?
And the thing is, I feel like it's not, like, especially back home, I don't think it's more so like being available. I sincerely think it has everything to do with stigma, because their resources are there. There's people who are social workers there. There's psychologists, psychiatrists, but every time you hear about a psychologist or something psyche, people think it's to do with madness.
Yeah.
And even to this day, and that's what, when I think about things back home, it's like I want to help out in that realm and destigmatize mental health. It's important, because even when I look at even relatives or people that I've gone to school with, people that I know, you can see self-destructive behavior, and they'll just say, oh, he doesn't listen. Oh, he's a bad kid. Oh, he's just this. No, what is leading them to that behavior is what people need to be asking, but they don't think about that. One, they'll look at the parents. Oh, look at their parents. They've been the parents, and they'll parents shame your parents, or they'll talk down on you and all this stuff, but they're not thinking about what is causing that behavior. And I feel like a lot of African kids, a lot of youth go through things even in their adolescent years where they haven't talked to anybody about it. It may not be anything to do with their parents, but there's trauma they could have experienced that they've never spoke to someone about, and that's eating them up as they grow up, and it manifests in different behaviors, but people will be quick to say, oh, he's stupid, he doesn't listen, he's an idiot, all this stuff.
One common one is they're rude.
Yes.
Right, you see somebody at a family event and they're rude to this particular uncle, and you're like, "Why are you rude to your uncle?" But you call them rude. You don't know what happened yesterday. Maybe this uncle said something, but you haven't created a space for me to nicely share or respectfully share it with you in a safe way.
Right.
So when this uncle comes near me, whatever I can do to make sure they back off is what I'm going to do. But you see the rude child, you don't even think possibly that. Something happened.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that, because we don't talk about mental health, period, it doesn't even cross our minds sometimes that there could be more than meets the eye.
Right. But also I feel like it's because you're just not supposed to talk about it. It's like, that's how you're raised. Like, oh, you don't talk about those things. Some people even know that, oh, okay, there's people who keep secrets in families. They keep them, but they'll still act like, okay, this is, you just move on with life. They don't see how those things are affecting generation after generation after generation,
Yeah. So we've talked about some of the things that we can do differently, but let's open it up a little bit more, I guess. Talk to people. Like, what do you, as a friend, as a parent, to, I guess, what can we do differently to make it easier for folks to either talk to us or share or be open about their mental health and related things?
I would say educating yourself on mental health. If someone's, or getting, like I said, getting to know someone, and when you learn someone, you know how to talk to them, and you get to know either like their triggers, or you get to know, okay, this person has been through this, and you just kind of know how to navigate talking to someone, but also just being authentic and authentically caring about how someone feels. Like I said, words mean things. People, you may just think you're passing a comment and it sticks with someone. As an example I always use, someone can come over and punch you right now and leave a bruise. That bruise is going to heal. But someone can come and insult you and say certain things to you, and you're going to live with that. You're going to remember it for the rest of your life. So it's just being kind and knowing how to talk to someone and being available and holding space for the people you care about, listening to them. And really listening, because we're listening, but are you really listening? Yeah.
Are you just waiting for me to finish so you can have a response and tell me to be positive?
Or to understand.
Or,
Yeah.
And as you speak, the work you have done, whether it be in therapy or in self-help books, whatever it is obvious, because holding space is a terminology I hear in our field, like as a psychologist, when we're consulting with each other, or when or at least sometimes when you're speaking to a client you have had for a long time, is when we speak about holding space for the client, etc. To some of the people around us, like, what the hell does that even mean, holding space? If you have something to tell me, and I'll give you advice on it, or I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you my peace of mind, brutal honesty, and that's what it is. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that you continue to do your work, and also sharing with people how to be there for each other, and to get away from the, people call it toxic positivity. I mean, sometimes that's what it is. You're dealing with stuff, and sometimes you just need to vent, or and all people want to tell you is how it's going to be better, and how God's got you, and how things will turn around. And if I'm sure you've had experiences with things like that. In the moment when you've shared something, like a tough time that you've had, and the first thing out of the person's mouth is, all things happen. Oh, what's the quotation?
All things happen for a reason.
There is that, and then God knows best. Or sometimes when you lose someone, there's grief, and then somebody says God gives and God takes. Like, if that's the first thing that comes out of people's mouths after you share, like, how is that? Is it helpful?
It feels generic. It feels generic because it's like you're saying what you feel like what you think you're supposed to say, not really. Like, did you understand what I told you? And I feel like with understanding, after you understand where someone is coming from, it's kind of like, well, I'm sorry you're going through that. I'm sorry you're going through that. How can I help you through it? How can I make things better? Than just, sometimes people don't talk to you because they want advice. They just want you to hear them and understand them. There's a difference with, like, people want to be heard. Yeah. When I say I want you to hear me, is I want you to understand what I'm telling you and how it's impacting me and how it makes me feel. And as the person who's listening, I would want to know, how can I make it better? If I'm the one who's making you feel that way, I want to understand what I'm doing to make you feel that way, so I don't make you feel that way. Right. Or I want to know you better, so in the future we're not, because it's kind of like, I feel like I'm all over the place. Oh, it's kind of like when you talk to someone about something, right, and they've understood, right? And you think they've understood, but that same thing happens again. It's kind of like you feel like you're not being heard. you know? And that's it's tough to be in, because then it's like, me as a listener, I don't want to put myself in that position where I'm making you feel like that again.
Right.
You know? So I've kind of forgot where I was leading to, but I was leading to something. It'll come back to me.
You got there.
You know?
You got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so effectively, we need to all do better at listening and
Understanding.
And I've seen videos on this on social media how people make little clips about when you're sharing with someone to effectively ask what you need. As in, today I just need to vent. You know, I don't need an advice. I don't need it. I just need to vent. And I don't see that catching on in our community. Like I don't see. It's not something that I've heard anybody, you know, say. You know, first maybe people check in like, hey, are you in the emotional space to listen to what I have to say?
In, yeah.
You know, like I don't see that happening in our spaces. And then check, you know, also the other person saying, what do you need from me? Do you need advice? I don't see that happening either. But I think ultimately, if we express our love and caring for the other person and their feelings, those things happen naturally.
Yeah.
Like we don't even have to preface it the way that, like, you know, it happens naturally. Because if you know me, you love me, you care about me, when you see me, you have a sense of how I'm doing.
Right.
And you probably check in, hey, how are you doing? And we're close enough that I will tell you if I'm struggling, you know.
And I feel like even when you get to know someone on that level, their silence is loud, you know? So you know something is wrong without them saying something. You know, like for instance, my friend, she knows, like if I haven't texted her or I haven't called her in a while, she's like, hey, how are you doing? I haven't talked to you. Oh, why are you not calling me? Oh, why are you not? She knows something is up and she'll call. So I feel like when you understand someone's silence, you understand them better and you know how to help them without having, because some people don't want to be asked what's wrong. You just learn them and you kind of know, okay, how can I show up for this person and they know that I'm there for them without having to ask them, hey, what's wrong?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that one that's a tricky one.
It is.
It's a tricky one.
Because nobody's a mind reader.
You understand? It's a tricky space. Yes. I think it's possible in very, very close relationships and marriages.
Yes.
Any others, like,
yeah.
You know,
it can also be unfair because you can't. Yeah. I can't expect to know what you're thinking or know what you're going through if you don't. And that's another thing that I have struggled with.
Especially when you mask really well.
Yes. Right? And that's something that I have struggled with, where I'm expecting someone to know that I'm upset or you did that and you know that it's going to make me mad. And they have no idea that I'm mad, but I expect them to know what they did. You know? So yeah, it can be unfair. And that's something I want to work on and I'm working on, is like, I can't expect someone to understand me without me expressing myself, you know?
Yeah. Now there are people who are blatantly, wouldn't, give premium to your feelings. So they get it, they just don't care. Those are the people we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about the people who they care about you, getting better at communicating with them so they know where you are, and also sharing with them what you need from them. Because especially in a marriage, sometimes it's, you think, well, James, you're an adult. You should know this. I shouldn't have to tell you. Right? But James doesn't care. It makes no difference to me if this laundry is done today or tomorrow. But you think, well, we have a full laundry basket. You don't have to be told to know that it has to be done today. So now there's an issue.
Yeah.
Because you think he should know and he doesn't care.
Right.
So, that's just an example, by the way. James is not that kind of man, But the idea is it's important in relationships as much as possible to continue to build that open communication space so we feel free to express to each other and not feel like a burden.
Right.
I think that's huge too. When somebody shares with you, how do you, because I think you're going to try, but how do you play it so, and I put play in quotes, how do you play it so the person knows that, hey, I got you, like what you shared with me may be tough, but this is what I can do to help, or this is, feel free to come to me, and whenever I feel like I'm not in the space for it, I'll let you know. Like how do you keep that space open to have free communication with the people you care about?
Not being overly critical, because more times, especially people who struggle with depression and anxiety, we're already critical of ourselves. So when you get it from someone else, usually it makes you shut down. Yeah. You know, you go into a shell and it's like, yo, I will never talk to you about this again. Or it's like, you know, I should have never said anything. You know, you beat yourself up for it. But I think being open and extending grace to people is what may allow them to come back to you, knowing that, okay, I can talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, you're a safe, being a safe place for someone. Yeah. You know, and making them feel, like I said, making them feel heard. And not, also, another thing is not being dismissive. Because what's big to me, just because something is small to you does not make it small to me. Well. So when someone brings that, it's like, oh, that's not even a big deal. That's a sure way to never hear about it again, you know? So just validating someone's feelings. To you, it might sound ridiculous. Like, yo, why are you feeling, what the heck? It's not even that big of a deal. But
it's big to me.
It's big to me. Yeah. You know?
And that should matter to you if you care about me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that brings up so intent versus impact, right? It's not an argument or anything like that. But then obviously when you're speaking to people, we tell folks that, hey, you have to be careful what you say, because even if you mean well, sometimes the way it lands may not be great. So you have to be careful what you say, how you communicate, and think about the other person's feelings. You know,
words mean things.
Exactly like you said, right? And then there's also the person on the receiving end of it. You have to also keep in mind who the other person is and how they feel about you, so that what they say can be received from a place of, because sometimes two people can say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And from one of them, you can hear it as a joke. And from the other, it's an insult. Because you are assuming their intent based off of how you know them.
Right.
You know. Yeah. So I think while we are encouraging people to watch how their words land, it's also important for the people on the receiving end to also consider a person's intent.
And usually that's hard to do, especially if you've not done the work. That is hard. It's actually hard for a lot of people. You know, that's a hard thing to do, because sometimes it takes a while for you to get out of your head and be like, oh, maybe that person didn't mean it that way. But in that moment, especially if it's something that it infuriates you, it's like right there and then you know.
Yeah. Typically, if what it digs into your insecurities,
right,
like something that you're already self-conscious about, you know, the person doesn't know. You know, the person hasn't even thought about that, says something, and then boom, you know, it hits right there, and 3 days you're upset about it.
Right. And they have no idea. And they're shocked, like, what the heck? I didn't even mean it. It's like, no, you did. You knew what you did. You knew what you were saying, you know? But yeah, it's man, human beings are interesting.
Very interesting, very, very complicated.
Yes.
You know, and the goal is to continue to get to know each other better. And when you're close to someone, you know, keeping those lines of communications open, and as much as possible, for good people, assuming good intent. I think that's huge, to be honest. Like in a marriage, in any relationship, assuming good intent. And for the person, anytime you're relating to other people as well, just that's where I guess meeting each other halfway, you know, also thinking about your words and making sure you put it in the best possible way. You know, so I despise people who say things like, I'm just going to, you know, say what's on my mind, and
whether you like it or not,
take it or leave it. Like I'm brutally honest. No, you're just mean. You're just rude. You know, don't hide it under brutal honesty.
Right. And they feel good about it. To be honest with you, when someone says stuff like that, it's like, okay, no, you did that for you, because it makes you feel good. Yeah,
you know, like, if I have a friend who says, I say what I say, I don't care how you feel about it, I'm never telling you anything important to me. And you're probably not going to be my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So for you, like, do you ever, being someone with ADHD, do you struggle with hypersensitivity? Or Are you more dismissive?
Actually, in the best possible way, I'm more dismissive.
Okay.
Dismissive.
That's a man thing.
Hey, it probably is. Dismissive in the sense that, and actually, I think you're probably putting the language to it for me. I originally thought about it more as forgetful. Like I let go of things a lot easier than almost everybody I know. When things happen, in the moment, of course, it hurts. Give it a few hours, and I'm moving on. Come back a couple of days, and I don't even remember it. If you remind me, I go like, oh, like whenever I tell some of my closest friends, Tony Dawkins, I say I don't remember my struggles, and I legitimately don't. Like if ever somebody wanted to write a book about me, it would be all roses and petals, because I don't remember like the times when I went through shit.
But don't certain things bring back those memories? Like if something happens, when it brings back
It's almost
that?
in a way that's, I giggle about it. The intensity of the hurt does not hurt nearly as much. And this cuts across like our miscarriage. In the moment, it hurt. I remember driving home crying, but it does not feel nearly as painful now. Right. And like for you to upset me legitimately, again, with the ADHD means that my emotions sometimes can be all over the place. So sometimes I can be probably upset about something that isn't that big a deal, but it doesn't last. So for you to upset me the last, you have to really have messed up. Right. So I think I'm more on the dismissive end,
Okay.
but more of my feelings. Yeah. It's easier to let go, So I had to actually do, I guess, it's not even a conscious work, but I guess in a way it is, like going to school, being a therapist and everything, to be able to sit with and understand the other person's feelings. Because most likely, for many people that I meet, half of the things you're talking about, I've been through it before, and it wasn't that big of a deal to me. So I have to actually check with myself to recognize that it is a big deal to you.
Right.
To be a good therapist. I remember, like when I was at OSU and I worked with college students, like, like a part of
Like, really?
me will go like, this is your thing. Like that's your issue, and I had to catch myself and realize, the fact that it doesn't mean the same thing to you does not mean they don't need the help. So I guess bringing it back, I tend to be more dismissive in the best possible way. And I think for me at least, it's a good thing because it helps me heal quicker. Because when I actually think about the emotional aspect doesn't feel that way, but I've been through some shit. Right. And if they all held the same sensitivity that it does for people over long periods of time, I don't know where I'll be.
Do you think maybe you disassociate? Like you don't want to feel that way, so it's like you kind of easily just let it go? Or do you really let it go? Like,
so
like, is it a defense mechanism for you?
Defense mechanism, that's 100%.
Yeah.
It's a defense mechanism, that's for sure. But I think ultimately it's working, right? Because I am at this age and with what I know about mental health, I'm aware enough to know that if I push off my feelings, it will resurface, right? So it's not that I'm pushing them off or ignoring them. I actively have learned to not dwell.
That's something I'm learning.
Right. I think it's hard to say this without somebody feeling like they did me wrong. But growing up, I learned really quickly to not dwell because it was at the age and what life was throwing at me for that age. It felt like there was always something. Right. So I didn't have time to dwell on this one thing because something else is coming.
Right. But I feel like that's more so something that men kind of have to have. Like it's like when you're kind of brought up to like, especially us, like you got to be strong. You can't get stuck on this thing. You got to keep moving forward,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And weirdly, some aspects of me that I think are ADHD related as well is what helps. I have vivid imagination.
Yeah.
I can create a life in my head and be gone. I guess that's what some people call it, dissociation, but yeah, technically that's not it. But like I can create I'm still here. Like, if I'm in the room and somebody walks in, I'm there. I'm fully present. I'm aware of things going on. But I can, you know, what I guess some things that some therapists might do with you and call it guided meditation. I do it myself. I can create a space where things are great. And if I can see it in my imagination, weirdly, it feels like it's possible and it helps me move on.
That's interesting. So question is, do you struggle? So is it just ADHD, or do you struggle with like anxiety and depression? Because sometimes having anxiety will not let you get to that place where it's like you're thinking about, oh yeah, life could be like, oh no, it's like one thought comes, the other one comes in. Yeah,
it's quite literally the opposite of anxiety. It's quite literally the opposite of depression, right? Like, being able to see a world where things are improving. That's quite literally the opposite of what people with depression do. Like, you don't see that,
right?
There's a lot more hopelessness. So no, for me it's always been ADHD. Like no history of anxiety or depression. And it goes back to what we're saying about the two ways some people go, happy-go-lucky, right? So for me, it was ADHD, and I've always been happy-go-lucky. So
you're on the hyper end,
like you feel like if I fail a class, for example, it sucks in the moment. Worst case, I worry what somebody might say when I go home, but a few days later, move on. And I don't know, and we mentioned in the podcast, I don't know if it was something nobody taught me. It's kind of just who I am and who I've become or who I've had to be, so I feel like for me, it's taking a lot of work to actually sit with and know what somebody else is, not know what they're feeling, but sit with them, stay with them, and be present for all of it. It's probably one of the reasons why I don't do actual individual therapy as much, because I don't, inherently, my mind is very, very solution focused.
Again, I feel like that's a man thing. Yeah. Maybe that's for real. I mean, of course women are like that too in certain aspects, but.
So we were talking about how ADHD presents differently, and how it sounds like a lot of my experiences are influenced by being raised as a man, and needing to almost like move on from boy, just keep it going, stay strong, you need to be all right. And as you speak on it, it does make sense, but in my experience it hasn't been an explicit saying. Like literally nobody in my life has ever told me, don't cry, you're a boy, don't cry. Right? Now it's always, whenever I watch TV and people say things like, when I started my business, everybody said I was going to fail. It's like, which friends do you have? Like, who's around you?
Right.
Explicitly telling you your business,
you're going to fail,
will not thrive.
Or is it you who's just thinking that's what people are thinking?
Right. Or people say things like, I got questions, or I don't know if this thing's gonna work out, or stuff. I don't know. Like, I feel like I don't think people are genuinely that mean to explicitly say
it happens.
Well, how are you telling your friend your business is going to fail? Like,
it just reminds me of a time too when I was with my friend. We're driving actually to class, and I remember saying, "Man, like one day I'm gonna write a book," And he said, "Oh man, like just chill out, like what are you really gonna write up?" It's kind of like diminishing you, just because now when I think about it, it's just because you feel like you can't do it. You're putting it on me. But in that moment, I'm just like, man, like maybe I just gotta just do stuff and get it done, then announce it or say it to someone, because then they can plant seeds of doubt in your head,
Yeah.
And that happens even with family. Sometimes like, okay, I want to do this. They want to tell you about how hard it is, or they want to tell you about, oh, you're not going to do this, or you're not going to make any money, or don't study this, don't study that, or you're going to fail if you study this, just find something else. It happens.
Well, and some of that brings it back to the intent versus impact thing, right? And I think, again, it goes back to, I guess, who I am inherently that makes it easy to assume good intent, right? So if I tell somebody I'm going to study psychology, for example, and they live in Ghana where barely anybody puts to see a psychologist on their budget or on their to-do list, if you're from a family that is expecting you to be the light, which in my family I was one of the main people that people were hopeful about, right? So of course, if you tell the person who is paying your tuition, etc., that you want to do psychology, they're going to push you away from that, and tell you to be a doctor, because that's how you're going to make money to take care of us, So
because there's no such thing as passion and money.
passion.
What is passion? Is
Right,
passion gonna feed you?
Exactly. You can't go to Walmart with passion.
Right,
Go to
right.
Walmart and go to the checkout and be like, hey, here's some passion.
Right.
So sometimes I get when people say things like that, and I get the intention. And I feel like I for my day-to-day life, I very good at assuming good intent for folks. That means that I don't take it most times when people say things, I don't take it to heart, because I'm assuming good intent on their part. I actually have a video which was probably at a time where you weren't on social media that says it's Hanlon's razor. Hanlon's razor says, never attribute to malice what can adequately be explained by stupidity. Right? Because sometimes people say things, they're just ignorant, they're just being stupid.
Right.
But if you assume that they're being malicious, it hits differently. But if sometimes you recognize that you're just so lame, you're just ignorant.
And it takes work to not take things personal. We're humans, man. Like, it's hard to not take things personal.
And it goes back to, I guess, the luxury of being a man. Because I think the things that maybe we might hear as men, it's probably easy to not take personally. Some of the things, I remember one of my friends when we were at this point, 6th grade or so, got 94 in a math exam, and he was pissed because a girl got 96%.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's like, 94? That's an A, that's for
good,
sure.
yeah.
You've passed. Like, there's no issue there.
Yeah.
Why are you this upset? Well, because this girl got higher than me. Ooh, what has that got to do with anything? So you can imagine if the girl heard this, right? So I'm not good enough to get higher than you, because people have been getting higher than you all your, every grade. It's not as if you're the top of the class,
Right.
Except that the people who are top of the class are usually me and one other guy, and you've never had an issue with it. The one time this girl gets one test higher than you go berserk. Like, so in a way, even the girl that got 96% is hearing that I'm not expected to be this good. Right? And that's not something you just brush off.
No.
You understand? That's much more difficult to just brush off. So
It's deeply rooted in something.
I don't know how all of that plays out, but one thing I know for sure is it helps me, and I think I express it to people, how we all are so different that you don't judge somebody's stress or somebody's mental health issues. Because obviously, in my case, with the way my brain works, it's going to be easy to move on from a difficult moment. The other person goes through the same thing, and it's not going to be that way for them. And in a way, for me, I don't get any props because I don't have anxiety. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
because it's not because I did some great work, or I did some, like I did my work in therapy, or I practiced some meditation skills as to why I don't take things to heart. In a way, just who I am, or who life has made me. I don't know. So if I see somebody struggling with anxiety, my mind doesn't, these days at least, my mind doesn't go, why are you this anxious about something this small? Right? But my mind does go, how can I help? And sometimes like this is the solution.
Yeah.
And I'm getting better, especially as a therapist, I probably should be, I'm getting better at not being so quick to offer a solution, because oftentimes that's not necessarily what they need. Many times, actually, people who are anxious about stuff know the solution. The emotion is just very difficult to just snap out of.
Right.
So they need a little bit more than like a handout or the solution. Like, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mental health, humans, we're all so complicated.
Yes.
And you throw in being African in the US a whole lot more.
Right.
Being African in the US, ADHD, anxiety, and the layers just
It's
pile
a lot
on.
of layers, yeah.
You throw in being a Black woman. So there's a whole lot more for us to talk about. If we follow the fun of it all, we'll be talking for 2 hours.
Right.
So we can round up today.
Okay.
Right. And as things come up, you live right across the street.
Yep.
We will touch base, talk on other things.
Okay.
Any last words for folks?
It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to talk about your feelings. Listen to understand and not to respond. And it's okay to seek help. It doesn't make you weird. It doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you strong. It shows strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's anything else that you guys want us to talk about,
let us know. All right. Hey,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving me your time. I appreciate it. One of these days I'll get James over here so we'll talk about men and mental health.
Yes.
So James, I've talked about it here, so you better be ready.
This is your open invite.
Right? Thank you once again. All right.
Thank you for having me.
To everyone who was listening, I hope you took something out of this. You laughed, you cried, you picked a lesson or two on how to take care of yourself, as well as how to be a safe space for others. And let's all take care of each other.
Yeah.
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 Peace.
Bye.